Gavin Moore had been breaking horses on his family's Wyoming ranch since he was 7 years old, and by the time he turned 33, people across the Rocky Mountain region spoke his name with respect. He had trained more than 400 horses, worked cattle in dust storms and snow, and competed in ranch rodeos across 3 states. To most folks, Gavin Moore was the kind of cowboy who already knew everything worth knowing about horses. And that was exactly the problem. He believed horses were the same everywhere, Wyoming or anywhere else. He believed firm hands made good horses. He believed control meant respect. Those beliefs had worked for him his entire life, until the night they were challenged in a small bar in Sheridan, Wyoming. It was late, the kind of night where boots were kicked loose and beer tasted better after a long day of cattle work. Gavin sat with a few rancher friends when a woman named Nina Walsh slid into the booth beside them. Nina was a wildlife photographer, passing through town with a camera full of places Gavin had never seen. She pulled out her tablet and began showing videos from Mongolia. The screen filled with endless grassland under a sky that seemed too big to be real. Horses ran without fences. Children no older than 4 rode bareback, fearless and calm. Families moved their homes and livestock using nothing but horses. No machines, no roads, no rush. They live with their horses differently, Nina said quietly. It's not about control. It's not about breaking them. You'd have to see it to understand. Gavin laughed and set his beer down hard on the table. Horses are horses, he said. Doesn't matter where you are. They need firm handling, clear rules, and someone in charge. That's just how it works. Nina smiled, the kind of smile that made Gavin uneasy. Then prove it, she said. Come with me next month. 3 weeks with traditional herders in the Mongolian mountains. Work with their horses. If you still believe that after, I'll admit you were right. Gavin's pride answered before his mind could slow it down. You're on, he said. 3 weeks later, he handed his ranch to his brother Lucas, packed his bags, and boarded a plane that took him farther from Wyoming than he had ever been. Smaller planes followed. Rough roads replaced highways, and soon Gavin found himself staring out across grassland that made even Wyoming feel small. The air smelled different. The land felt older. They reached the herder camp late in the afternoon. 4 round felt tents sat in a loose circle, smoke rising from a central fire. There were no fences, no corrals, no barns. Horses grazed freely in every direction, scattered across the land like shadows moving through grass. The horses shocked him first. They were small and rough, shaggy with thick necks and heavy heads. Nothing like the sleek horses he knew. Nina's translator, a young woman named Erdine, explained they were Mongolian horses, unchanged for thousands of years. Then Gavin met Batu. The old man was small and weathered, his face carved by wind and time. He wore traditional clothing and stood straight despite his age. When Erde translated Batu's welcome, she added something else with a slight smile. He says Nina told him, you know everything about horses. Gavin nodded, uncomfortable but polite. Batu gestured and began walking. Gavin followed, his legs burning as they crossed the open land. After nearly an hour, Batu stopped and pointed toward a distant herd grazing far away. The horses were at least a quarter-mile off. Batu made a sound, soft and musical, carried by the wind. One horse lifted her head, a small bay mare with a dark mane. She turned and began walking toward them, not running. Walking, steady and sure, as if she knew exactly where she was going. She crossed the entire distance and stopped in front of Batu, pressing her nose against his chest. Gavin felt his certainty shift. This is Saranjal, Erdine translated. She is 22 years old. She is free to leave whenever she wants. Then why doesn't she? Gavin asked. Batu's answer came softly. Why would she? This is her family. That night, Gavin lay awake listening to the wind move across the grass, his mind restless. There were no fences here, no ropes, no force, and yet the horses stayed. Over the next days, everything he believed began to fall apart. Batu did not chase horses. He did not rope them or drive them. He waited. He stood still and breathed. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer. Gavin watched a young, unhandled horse approach Batu on the third day, not because he was forced, but because he chose to. Batu never moved toward him. He waited until the horse stepped forward on his own. "You do not catch a horse," Erdine translated. "You wait until the horse catches you." It sounded foolish to Gavin, slow, inefficient, but the calm in the horses told a different story. Then came the storm. Dark clouds rolled over the land without warning. Thunder cracked. Lightning split the sky. Horses scattered in panic, running blind with fear. Gavin searched for shelter, but Batu ran toward a young stallion, screaming in terror. Gavin shouted, but the wind swallowed his voice. Batu reached the horse and pressed his forehead against the horse's head. He breathed. That was all. The horse fought, then slowed, then stilled. Their breathing matched. The storm passed, and the herd settled. Later, Gavin asked how. Batu's answer stayed with him forever. "There is a place where the heart meets," Erdine said. "You cannot force it." The horse knows. Standing there under the clearing sky, Gavin realized something frightening and beautiful at the same time. After 33 years with horses, he was only just beginning to learn. Gavin woke the next morning with a strange heaviness in his chest, the kind a man feels when the truth begins to settle deep enough to make him uncomfortable. He had come to Mongolia to prove something. Now he was starting to understand that the land itself might prove something back to him. The days passed in wide, quiet spaces. The kind of quiet that stretched across the steppe and settled inside a man's bones. Gavin followed Batu everywhere. At first out of stubborn pride, then out of curiosity. And finally because something in Batu's way of being with horses touched a part of Gavin he had forgotten existed. Every day the horses roamed free. They chose their own graze. They stayed near camp not because they were fenced, but because they wanted to. Families moved through their daily work without rushing, guiding the herd by sound and presence rather than rope and control. Mothers milked mares while children laughed and chased foals through the grass. It looked like chaos to Gavin, yet somehow it worked with perfect harmony. One afternoon, Gavin watched Batu work with a nervous 3-year-old gelding. Back home, Gavin would have used a round pen and pushed the horse until it stopped resisting. Batu did the opposite. He stood 15 feet away and breathed. The horse snorted, pawed the dirt, and circled with wild eyes. Batu stayed still. Minutes stretched into an hour. Gavin shifted his weight, bored and irritated, but then the gelding's head lowered, the wild tension softened, his feet slowed. And finally he stepped toward Batu, one step, then another, until he reached the old man and touched his chest with his nose. Gavin felt something shift inside him, like a door cracking open that he didn't even know existed. That night he sat beside the fire with Erdine, the translator, while Batu prepared tea. The stars above looked close enough to touch. "How do they train horses without training?" Gavin asked. Erdine smiled. "They do train, just not in the way you know. Horses learn from the herd, from watching, from being part of the family. Humans become another member of that herd. Not a boss, not a master, just family." Gavin wanted to argue, but the storm image kept replaying in his mind. Batu pressed forehead to forehead with a panicked stallion in lightning. No rope, no force, just trust. On the 4th week, Batu surprised him. He saddled 2 horses and motioned for Gavin to follow. They rode for hours across rolling hills until the land opened into a wide valley. There, grazing below them, was a herd of wild horses. These were not like the Mongolian herder horses. These were true wild horses. Horses that had never known human touch, living the same way their ancestors had for thousands of years. "What are we doing here?" Gavin asked. Erdine translated Batu's soft reply. "There's something you must see." Batu dismounted and started walking toward the wild herd. Gavin nearly choked. "He can't do that. Those horses will bolt." But Batu kept walking. The wild horses lifted their heads, their muscles tightened, a few took steps back. Batu stopped 60 feet away and lowered himself to the grass. He sat still as stone. Time passed slowly. Gavin's legs cramped as he watched from the hillside. The wind brushed the grass in long waves. The wild herd shifted uneasily, but Batu did not move. Then, something unbelievable happened. A young mare, barely 4 years old, stepped forward, cautious, listening to something Gavin couldn't hear. She walked toward Batu, fighting her instincts with each step until she stood inches from him. She sniffed him, studied him, then lowered her head and let him touch her forehead. Gavin felt the breath leave his lungs. It was the same connection he saw in the storm, a bond that had nothing to do with ropes or saddles. After several quiet moments, the mare returned to her herd. Batu stood and walked back to Gavin with a small smile. Through Erdene, he spoke. You work horses, but do you listen to them? Do your horses choose you, or do they stay because they have no other choice? Gavin had no words, because deep down he knew the answer. The weeks came to an end faster than he wanted. He helped Batu move camp, he rode across grasslands that felt as old as time, and he watched children handle horses with more quiet confidence than most grown cowboys. He learned which call brought the herd home, and which sound moved them to new grazing. He learned the way horses read human breath and heartbeat long before they read body language. On the final morning, as they prepared to leave, Batu handed Gavin a small horsehair charm woven with blue thread. He says this is a protection blessing, Erdene translated. It keeps your heart open so horses can see you clearly. Gavin swallowed a tight knot in his throat. Tell him thank you. Batu shook his head and placed his palm over Gavin's chest. He says you already thanked him when you learned to listen. Gavin did not know how to respond. All he knew was that something inside him had broken open, and something new had begun to grow. When he boarded the plane home, Wyoming no longer felt like the center of the horse world. It felt like a place waiting for him to start over. He didn't know yet how much Mongolia had changed him, but Wyoming was about to find out. Gavin stepped off the plane in Wyoming expecting to feel relief, comfort, the familiar smell of sagebrush and dust that had always grounded him. Instead, everything felt strange. The airport felt loud. The roads felt crowded. Even the open land outside Sheridan felt smaller than he remembered, as if Mongolia had stretched his sense of space forever. Back at the ranch, Lucas met him with a grin. Well, look who finally came home. 3 weeks of foreign horses turn you into some kind of monk. Gavin tried to smile, but his mind was still full of the endless steppe, of Batu's quiet strength, of wild horses approaching by choice instead of force. The first real test came the next morning. A 3-year-old mustang mare from Nevada had been giving the ranch trouble. She had been in the round pen for weeks. 5 trainers had failed. 2 had been kicked. Everyone called her dangerous. She's mean, one ranch hand warned. Ain't no fixin' a horse like that. Gavin looked into the mare's frightened eyes and saw something different. Not anger. Fear. Deep fear. The kind that made a horse fight to survive. He surprised everyone by opening the round pen gate. What are you doing? Lucas shouted. She'll run off. Gavin shook his head. Let her. The mare bolted out like a streak of lightning, kicking dirt behind her, racing into the wide pasture. Gavin didn't chase her. He walked out to the middle of the pasture, sat down on the ground and waited. His father watched from the fence, confused. You feeling all right, son? I'm listening, Gavin said softly. For 9 days he came to the pasture, sat for hours, breathed, sang a soft tune he remembered Batu humming. The mare circled far away, always watching, but never approaching. On the 10th day she took a single step toward him. On the 12th day, 2 steps. On the 15th day she walked close enough to sniff his hat before bolting away in fear. But she came back. And on the 21st day she touched her nose to his shoulder. A quiet, trembling touch. a choice. Gavin felt tears burn his eyes. It was the closest he had ever come to the wild mare in Mongolia. A moment that came not from force, but from trust. 2 months later, the Mustang followed Gavin everywhere. No rope, no saddle, no pressure, just partnership. And when she worked cattle, she moved with a sharp, focused grace that stunned everyone who saw her. "I don't get it," Lucas said one afternoon. "You didn't break her. You didn't even train her. But she listens to you." Gavin smiled. "She taught herself. I just gave her a reason to stay." Word spread fast across Wyoming. Ranchers drove from miles away to watch Gavin's quiet methods. They brought horses that no one else could fix. Horses called hopeless. Horses people had nearly given up on. One by one, Gavin sat with them. He waited, he breathed, he listened, and the horses changed. He never claimed it was a method. He always said the same thing. It's not about teaching horses. It's about becoming someone a horse wants to be with. 5 years passed. Gavin's ranch became known for something rare. A place where broken horses found their strength again. A place where patience mattered more than power. A place where a cowboy had learned to listen. Then one day Gavin stood in the airport again, heart pounding like a drum. Batu was coming to Wyoming. At age 77, the old herder stepped through the terminal doors, smaller than Gavin remembered, but still carrying that same quiet presence. Gavin hugged him tight, feeling unexpected tears rise. "Welcome to my home," he said, and Erdine translated. For 3 weeks, Batu visited ranches across Wyoming. Cowboys who had spent their whole lives working horses watched him with puzzled eyes at first, then growing respect. They saw wild colts soften under his touch. They saw problem horses stand quietly beside him after only minutes. They saw what Gavin had seen years ago. But the most important moment came on Batu's final day. Gavin led Batu to the pasture. The Mustang mare, the one no one could train, grazed in the sun. Gavin made the soft Mongolian call he had practiced for years. The mare lifted her head and walked straight to him, pressing her muzzle gently against his chest. Batu watched and smiled with deep pride. Through Erdine he spoke. "Now you understand. Now you are not just cowboy. Now you are horse family." They stood in the golden Wyoming light, 2 men from opposite sides of the world connected by the same truth. Horsemanship was not about dominance. It was not about breaking. It was about trust, choice, heart. Before leaving, Batu gave Gavin a traditional Mongolian horse spirit flag. Its threads fluttered in the breeze like a whisper from the steppe. "He says, 'Hang this where horses can see it,'" Erdine translated, "so their spirits know they are honored here." Gavin hung the flag above the barn door, where it still waves each morning in the Wyoming wind. Years later, long after Batu passed away, Gavin still walks into the pasture at dusk and makes the call he learned in Mongolia. And horses always come. Not because they must, but because they choose to. And that choice is the greatest gift a cowboy can ever earn.